right, hello, everyone. We are live. My viewer count isn't completely accurate on the software I'm using all the time here to stream across different platforms. So if anyone's here yet, welcome. We'll be starting in 2 minutes here on making the Metaverse an impactful piece of your e-learning strategy. So I'm really excited to go through this presentation, whether you're working at an academic institution or you're in a training HR space, looking at how you can make the metaverse, or more specifically virtual reality, part of how you teach and train. So we'll just give it one more minute here, and then we can jump into things. I see a few people joining now, so yeah, definitely throughout this whole presentation, feel free to put comments into the comment section. I should be able to see them, whether they're coming from YouTube, LinkedIn, or Twitter, and I will make sure to answer those throughout the presentation if it makes sense, or if not, I'll make sure to answer them all at the end, making sure that we leave lots of time for questions at the end as well. So if you are watching this live, amazing, really happy to have you here and be able to answer your questions live, but as well, this will be recorded and will be automatically posted across all of our pages here on LinkedIn, YouTube, or Twitter. Will automatically be uploaded and posted right away afterwards, so you can rewatch it there, as well as feel free to comment below afterwards or send us a message or email me directly at evan@expertvr.com, and we can make sure to answer any questions that you have about this presentation or anything else that might come to mind, or ideas that might be sparked through this presentation. So it's 11 o'clock now, so I will switch into the presentation mode here, so you can read everything a little bit better. And sorry if my face blocks anything. If I notice anything's blocking, I will make sure to switch off my face for a second so that you can see whatever is there. But welcome and happy May the 4th, or may the 4th be with you if you're a Star Wars fan. This presentation we've given a few times in the past, but are continually updating it and making sure it's revamped with the latest information. So made a lot of changes since the last major presentation we gave last summer around this topic. So really happy to be able to share how you can use the metaverse to make an impactful influence on your e-learning strategy. So let's jump into it. So firstly, there's 3 main takeaways that we would like you to get from this presentation. 1, why is VR an important e-learning tool? 2, what type of VR should you be using? And 3, how would you implement VR at your institution? So hopefully by the end of this presentation, you get all 3 of those takeaways. And if you haven't, make sure to message me in the comments so that I can answer any questions to make sure you do get those 3 key takeaways. Before we get into that, and here I'll hide my face quickly. Before we get into that, my name is Evan Sitler-Bates. I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO of XpertVR. Outside of XpertVR, I'm a Brock University business graduate from 2019, currently out of the Ryerson DMZ Accelerator program. I'm also a director of the Immersive Learning Research Network Canadian chapter. So this is a network of institutions across Canada that get together on a quarterly basis to chat about how they're using immersive technology to help their students and their faculty learn. If you're interested in that, please let me know, and I'm happy to send you an invite. We chat on LinkedIn and online through email, but then have our meetings actually in a virtual reality world called Verbella. So yeah, would love to have you join. And then lastly, I do kind of live, breathe, and sleep virtual reality. So I like to throw in here, last summer, I won the Population 1 Community Cup. If you're not familiar, Population 1 is kind of one of the most popular games at the moment in the VR space, and it's basically Fortnite in virtual reality, but in my opinion, way better. All right, so who is XpertVR? Put my face back on there. Who is XpertVR? Well, our mission at XpertVR is to enable meaningful interactions regardless of physical distance, and in doing so, help a million people learn from actions and not statements. And as you can see here in these logos, you can see we're working with all kinds of different companies and people, from enterprise to academic to government. And yeah, mostly we're focused in the post-secondary space. As you can see, working with Brock, Conestoga, Humber, a lot of Ontario-based colleges and universities. But we also are now starting to work in the States and right across Canada. Oh, this transition isn't working properly. Sorry about that. Don't know why this transition isn't working properly, but basically here wanted to just go through the different types of acronyms that you might hear throughout this presentation so that you're up to speed if you don't know them. So VR stands for virtual reality. That's when you have a headset that you put on, you're completely immersed inside of the virtual world. Everything you see and interact with is virtual. Then you have on the other side of the spectrum, augmented reality or AR. And basically what this is you're able to put a portion of the virtual world into the physical world. So you put on glasses or through your phone with like Snapchat lenses or anything along those lines, you're seeing some sort of virtual element in your real world. Then most people kind of use that as a blanket term, but some people also might have a mixed reality or MR. And so that's kind of usually the step up of AR. So AR is like Pokemon Go back in the day, a couple of years ago. You might think of it, Pokemon just floats in front of you and doesn't really have any real world physics or relation to the real world. Whereas mixed reality, something, a virtual object could be placed on a table. Like I used to like to say, you put a virtual bouncy ball on the table with your physical hand, you could hit it, it would start rolling. When it gets to the end of the table, it falls off and bounces on the ground. So adding those real world physics is that mixed reality side of things. And then lastly, the metaverse. I like to put this picture in here just to show what the metaverse may look like. Basically, what I like to think about the metaverse is it's kind of an interchangeable term, in my opinion, with Web3 or Web 3.0, or the Oasis, or all these other terms that are out there. And basically what it is the next evolution of the internet in my mind. It's both the augmented reality and the virtual reality. It's a way to interact with the internet in a 3D space. And so as we've seen over the past 20 years or more, the internet has grown so much in every industry we have. Obviously, entertainment, you work on the internet, you learn on the internet, you socialize on the internet. So the metaverse is just that next step up. And obviously today we're talking about the education space, and why the metaverse is so important for that is because you're able to actually learn the skills that you're going to use in the real world by doing those actions in the virtual world. And having that built into the metaverse, I think, is very important, so that this isn't something that's just available for the few. It's something that everybody can have access to, like the internet today, so they can learn any skill possible. So, hide my face again here, going through a few XR common misconceptions. One term I did forget, XR. So XR is basically a blanket term for VR, MR, AR, maybe even the metaverse. Basically, it is extended reality and just a blanket term for everything. So XR, common misconceptions. Many people may think that may have tried something like this Google Cardboard here before, where you put it on, maybe you had motion sickness, or it was just really poor quality. Maybe even a headset that was better than this was poor quality. But in today's world, headsets are starting to get to that 8K plus resolution. They are coming down in how heavy they are. You're thinking they might be clunky, like in the bottom picture there. On average, they weigh less than a pound. Some of them don't even need a computer to be hooked up to. And on the software side, there's been so many improvements that limit the motion sickness. That said, it still can be a problem, but there's so many ways to work around it and make sure that it isn't a problem. And then lastly, VR is for gamers or geeks, or it's only for entertainment. And that's definitely not true. As you can see here, there's predictions that in the next few years, the education market size for VR is going to be worth $13 billion or more. And you can see this across every industry. VR is starting to grow. And like I said, the metaverse is just the next evolution of the internet. So think about everything the internet touches today. It's continued to have grown over the past 20 years. It's just going to continue growing with a new medium to access it and a new way to access it through the metaverse, through 3D. So let's get into that first key takeaway. Why is VR an important e-learning tool? So first of all, PwC put out this study, and this is what I like to reference a lot because they compared the virtual reality classroom versus a real classroom versus an e-learning Zoom type classroom. And what they found, comparing between the traditional and the virtual classroom, the e-learning one always fell kind of in between, but comparing those two, they found that students were 4 times more focused in the virtual environment than they were in the traditional classroom environment. Just because you take away all of the outside distractions that you wouldn't have. And then this led to a 275% increase in the confidence of students after learning the training and being able to apply those skills. So by being so much more focused and by being able to really apply those skills that they were learning in the training, they were so much more confident coming out of it. And that's really what you want in every student coming out of your class, of course. To further compare this to more graphs here from PwC, they found that it was almost or more than 4 times faster to complete the training as well. So they're coming out with more confidence, more focused, and they're finishing it faster, which means they're ready to move on and be done with that class if they feel confident enough. Or if they want to practice again, they have the time, and because it's virtual, they can repeat again and again to go through that training again and again to build up those skills. And then as well, when you're talking about any skills that involve working with people, whether that be a counselor, a business leader, or a police officer, being able to emotionally connect with people in the real world is obviously a huge benefit and something that you need on all of those jobs, I would say. And in the virtual space, people saw that they were 3.75 times more emotionally connected to the avatars and people inside of there versus traditional learning sense. So that just means that while they're learning these lessons in the virtual world, they're picking up the information a lot quicker because they're emotionally connected, and they can then be emotionally connected in the real world, referencing back to what they learned in the virtual world. So moving right along to our second takeaway out of 3, what type of VR should you be using? It's a question that we get all the time because there's a ton of different options out there. So first, starting on the software side, there's really 4 levels of virtual reality. 1 being virtual classroom platforms. Don't worry, we'll get into all of these. 2 being pre-built or off-the-shelf simulations. 3, zero code editors. And 4, the custom simulations. Each one has advantages and disadvantages. So we'll go through all 4 of them right now. So first off, we have our virtual classroom platforms. Here, you're able to interact with students and peers in real time. You can see in this photo here, this is taken from Spatial. In Spatial, you're able to interact both as a 3D avatar that you just upload a picture of yourself. It makes the avatar, it looks pretty realistic, or you can join by video, as you can see there. So you're able to interact in that virtual sense, no matter how far away you are, being able to pull in text, audio, video files, 3D models, all kinds of different things. So you can have even more collaboration and creativity than if you were meeting in the real world. Then you can go on field trips or go to other places around the world. And like I mentioned, you have that VR capability, sometimes also an augmented reality capability, and then the PC capability. So this means if you're trying to get this classroom out to 100 plus students or even 40, 20 students, having that option of accessibility to be able to come on PC or to be in VR and not have to buy all of the headsets if need be. Um, it's really good to have that. And most of these platforms here have it. Each one kind of has its own benefits. VR chat's more for entertainment, for Bella's for professional meetings. Altspace is very popular in the education space as well as Engage. Spatial is more towards creativity and businesses as well. So if you want to know which one's right for you, please reach out. Happy to give some recommendations. We also have some blog posts out on this. But basically, most of these, if not all of them, are free to start. And then depending on how many people you have, it goes up to $50 to have them on there. So moving to the next one, we have our pre-built simulations. So these are simulations that sometimes you have to contact somebody to get, but lots of the time they're also just available on the store of the VR headset that you own or on your computer of whichever store you're downloading from. So a couple of great examples of this. We started out 5+ years ago now with Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes. And basically this is a game where you put on the headset and there's a bomb in front of you. And there's all kinds of different modules and things that you have to play with on this bomb and how do you defuse it. And there's a team of people outside, your colleagues, that have a manual on how to defuse that bomb. So you have to use communication and leadership skills and all kinds of other soft skills to communicate how to defuse that bomb under pressure. So it's just kind of a fun team building game. And that's one of those ones that's just off the shelf. You pay a little bit of money for, and then everyone can use it. There's VR Anatomy by Organon. There's all kinds of other like healthcare and surgery type simulations. Body Swaps has some amazing software for learning soft skills and leadership skills in the workplace, where basically you talk to an avatar and go through a conversation, and usually a very difficult conversation, or maybe you're practicing for an interview or something along those lines. And then it body swaps you, as the name suggests. So basically moves you into the avatar's body. And now you're talking or looking at yourself. And then it plays back what you said and gives you feedback. And you can listen to it kind of from a completely new perspective now. So really interesting way to practice those soft skills. And then lastly, on the left here, we have one of our simulations from XpertVR. This is one of our police training simulations for de-escalation. So in here, you go into this apartment and there's a couple fighting, and you have to de-escalate the situation and see what you have to do as a police officer in this situation. So looking at these, many of them are free. Many of them have demos or would at least offer meetings. Like us, obviously, we would be happy to come and demo what we've built. And then they go up to $300 per student. On our end, we're looking at about $100 per student, but yeah, it ranges depending on what you're looking for. Then I'll hide my face again here, going to option number 3, zero code editors. So basically what this is if you looked around, looks like there may be some issues streaming to LinkedIn. Just gonna check here, sorry if checking that this is streaming. Oh. Looks like we're having some issues here on LinkedIn. I'm sorry about this. I'm just going to copy the YouTube link here for anybody watching on LinkedIn. YouTube. before, but hopefully you are watching on YouTube or Twitter right now if you're listening to me. And if you're on LinkedIn, hopefully you saw that link that I just sent. But as I said, these will be recorded and shared. So no worries if you had to leave because LinkedIn was having issues. But back to option number 3 here, zero code editors. So basically here, this allows you as a faculty member or talking to your IT department to not have too many skills in VR development and still be able to make slightly custom VR simulations. So if you looked around and you need more than just those classroom meeting environments, and there isn't an off-the-shelf solution for what you need, or you need to have some of your branding or wording or messaging inside of the simulation, these zero-code editors can be a great tool to use. They work in VR, but also on PC or tablet. The one in the picture here is by Serious Factory. It's called the VTS editor. And basically, the main thing these allow you to do usually is to build branching dialogue systems or trees. So basically, you go in and you select what environment you're in, where an avatar is placed, and then you go up and have a conversation with them. And to have the conversation, it prompts you with 4+ questions that you could ask the avatar or things that you could say. And then based on what you select, they respond. And then you go through kind of this tree of different options that you could choose. Very, very great software. If you're willing to jump in and start playing around with it, there's sometimes amazing pre-built scenarios there, and can be pretty cost effective at $100 to $3,000 per year to use this type of software. So we've used it with a few of our clients, and a few of our clients have used it without us after we suggested it. And there's different options out there depending what you're looking for, but VTS has been one of the best ones we've seen. And then, unfortunately, it looks like my video isn't playing here. We're running into a few tech issues today. But lastly, we have custom simulations, and there's multiple people out there that build custom simulations, but obviously we want to promote our own at XpertVR and what we do. And really at XpertVR, what we find, and we'll get into this a little bit later, but what we found makes our simulations a little bit unique on the custom side is that we're building a story. We're not just building a simulation that trains your students or trainees on how to do X, Y, or Z skill. It's a story around that skill. So when they put on the headset, they're immersed into a story in an environment where they have to do something for an actual reason. It's not just to practice the skill. It's because in the example that I had here, it's a search and rescue simulation with firefighters, and there are victims inside of this burning building, and you as a firefighter have to go through and practice all of your skills, from taking down the door with a Halligan bar to crawling on your hands and knees and proper procedure to go through smoky areas or different parts of the house, radio call outs, everything along those lines. So with these simulations, they are completely customizable to anything you want. Ourselves or others can really build anything you can imagine. Obviously, it just takes more time and more resources depending on what you want to build. With that, you obviously have complete control over every detail, every blade of grass, every second of the scenario timeline. So you know what your students are going to be doing and learning as they go through. Some of the off-the-shelf simulations connect to LMS systems or have accessibility features, but working on a custom simulation, you can outline exactly what type of data you want to collect, exactly how you want that sent to your LMS or to other areas, and making sure that all the accessibility features you want are there. Because we're Ontario-based, we work a lot with AODA and making sure we're AODA compliant. But there's all kinds of other accessibility features that we look into, and industry committees that we follow to see how can we make our simulations as accessible as possible. So talking about data and being able to collect data, an amazing part of virtual reality is the amount of visual data that you can collect. Eye tracking is one of these main things where you're able to collect eye tracking data and then overlay that data with heat maps on the environment that that your student was in. So you can see, were they looking at the right places? Did they look there long enough? Did they concentrate somewhere else too long? You can see like fixation times, playback of them going through, and see the eye tracking as it was kind of a live playback. So really cool tools here in the eye tracking side of things, but also other biometric feedback, so heart rate, galvanic skin response, pupil dilation, things along those lines, as well as having simulations throughout or not simulations, surveys throughout the simulation or pre-post the simulation. And then lastly, one of our favorites is path tracking. So you can know what path somebody is taking throughout an environment. Did they take the most optimal path? What were they doing as they went through the simulation? And we like to work with Cognitive 3D. They have some of the best data tracking software, as well as we have some of our own in-house suite, depending on what you need collected. And Cognitive 3D, they're based out of BC, another amazing Canadian company focused on VR data collection and visualization. So looking at those custom ones and this fourth option of types of VR, to give you some indicators and rough ballparks of timeline and cost, usually you're looking at a range of 70 to 95,000, working with us at least, for lots of the simulations. This includes a 3D environment creation, 3D models, audio and text input, and maybe some data input collection, and timeline of 1 to 4 months. And then depending on what you want, like I said, really the sky's the limit. So then we start looking at 150 plus or more when you're bringing in multiple environments, interaction with 3D models, all kinds of other things. And just a quick review here of how we've been doing with our clients. But obviously this webinar isn't about us. So to keep moving forward, how would you implement VR at your institution? So I'll make my head disappear again in a second, but first, there's some questions you're going to want to ask yourself. Do we have the skills in-house? How many projects are we pursuing? What is your budget? Where will VR have the most impact? How realistic does the simulation need to be? And is our team aligned? So basically, do we have the skills in-house? Or do you have a development team that is going to develop the simulation, or somebody that's going to pick up one of those no-code editors, or even somebody that's just going to handle the headsets and installing the off-the-shelf projects or products that are out there? Are you pursuing multiple projects to start, or is there one kind of test bed project or prototype piloting project that you want to do first? Looking at those options ranging from the free off-the-shelf options up to those $150,000+ custom simulations, you want to know what your budget is. Is there something that is free that you can pilot and test? And if that gets proven out, then you start looking to budget to maybe buy some off-the-shelf projects, or you want to do something completely custom, but knowing the budget going into it so you can find the right option for you. Then where will VR have the most impact? You want to make sure that the class that you're introducing this to, or the trainees that you're introducing this to, are going to have an impact by going through VR. So if you're looking at multiple projects or multiple departments are asking to have a VR project done with them, start with the one that's going to have the most impact, whether that be the most amount of students it's going to impact. Is there some roadblocks that a certain department is running into at the moment that VR would help solve? Is there an area that's really been lacking in averages and grades of students that this might help impact? So looking at those different factors. How realistic does the simulation need to be? At XpertVR, we aim to make all of our simulations as realistic as possible. But depending on what you need and how complex it is, you might want to bring the realism down so that it can work on different headsets that don't have as much power as other ones, as well as maybe just to bring your costs and resources down, depending on exactly what you need. And then lastly, you've asked all these questions with a team. Is your team aligned? So what is the team that you need? Selecting your A team. Preferably, you're going to want somebody from IT that hopefully has some VR knowledge or is a VR enthusiast. That said, we don't always see that type of person on the team. It's just very helpful that once you start implementation, there's somebody ready to support the hardware and tech side of things. Most importantly, though, you're going to want a pedagogy expert. This is somebody that can go through, and whether you're working with us or you're looking at an off-the-shelf product or whatever you're doing, they can go through that simulation and understand if the learning outcomes are getting across inside of the simulation and making sure that it's being done properly for your institution. Then you're also going to want a funding decision maker. Obviously, if you're going with something free, this might not be needed, but as you start to upgrade or start to look for other simulations to work on, you're going to want that funding decision maker ready to help fund the decision that you make and have them involved with the process so that they can get people prepared and ready to move forward. Then development team, I have this highlighted because, like I said, this could be an in-house team, especially if you're an institution with a game development program. Maybe you could work with the students at your institution to develop at least the first simulation, if not more. So knowing, is this something you're outsourcing or bringing in-house is great. And then thinking about if you're only making one simulation per year, it probably doesn't make sense to have a full-time team because you're going to need at least 3 people on the team, a 3D artist, a technical artist, and a programmer to develop your simulations. So trying to understand that ROI on bringing the team in-house versus having one outsourced, or looking at a combination of the two. We work a lot with students at different academic institutions where we're doing a majority of the work, but we're able to give the institution a discount because we pass off a good portion of the work as well to the students at the school. That way they're learning and they're involved in an exciting project, and we're saving some of our resources so that we can develop more, a longer list of impactful simulations. Then another one that's probably right under the pedagogy experts or right alongside them as a person that you're definitely going to need to have on the team is the industry expert. Especially in the custom side of things. And for us, when we're developing a simulation, we understand we're the experts at virtual reality. We're not the experts at everything else. And that's going to be the same for every development company for the most part that you work with. So having the industry experts that can work alongside them and have bi-weekly meetings or at least regular meetings with the team to give feedback and make sure that they're replicating everything from the real world properly in the virtual world is going to be very important. So that could be the professors on your team or other faculty. It could also be somebody that you contract to bring in that's from like one of your partner organizations, but having that somebody that has that industry expertise. And then lastly, this students and trainees, they might not be involved right from the start of the project. If they can be, I think it's better, the more the merrier kind of thing. But having that student or trainee that has gone through the program or is going through the program at the moment that you're building the VR simulation for allows you to get user feedback. Just noticed my face was missing there. Allows you to get that user feedback that you need for the simulation and make sure that it's built properly for them. Now, moving on to the hardware side of things, there's kind of 3 types of headset, but we're going to ignore one. So there's standalone VR headsets, which as you can see is taking off over the next few years. Then we have home VR or tethered VR headsets. These are headsets that need to be plugged into a computer to work. And then lastly, we have mobile VR. This is something like a Google Cardboard where you put your phone into it. And you can see this is decreasing over the years just because it's not the greatest quality, as we mentioned earlier. So we're going to ignore that one. So now looking at the standalone VR, these are something like the Oculus Quest 2 or the Meta Quest 2 or the Vive Focus 3 here you can see, or Pico has an amazing line of headsets as well. So HTC, Oculus, and Pico, where Oculus is being replaced by Meta now through Facebook. They're the 3 main competitors in the standalone VR space. So these headsets are amazing because they require no extra equipment, no computer, nothing. They're just ready to go out of the box. They're very lightweight and easily portable, so you can mail them out to trainees or students. You can easily get them delivered to people and not have to have all kinds of extra equipment. The downside is that they do have limited power. It's basically a cell phone processor in there. So kind of the computing power of your cell phone is going to be in these headsets. They do an amazing job with that, and we use them for all kinds of custom simulations that we work on. So it's not going to stop you from building most simulations, but it may bring down the quality, and you may have to optimize some simulations depending on what it is. And the price for these kind of ranges $400 to $1,300 USD, with the Oculus side being the lowest and HTC being the highest. And they each kind of have different features. So if you want to talk about those, please feel free to post some questions or reach out to me afterwards. Now moving right along, the home or tethered VR headsets are an amazing set here. There's kind of three main companies that we look to in this space: HTC again, HP, and Vario. So these headsets offer highly realistic environments. So if you're researching something or you need the environment to be as realistic as real life, think maybe military training, any type of training that has very small wires or knobs or things that you have to interact with, anything along those lines. You want a highly realistic environment. It also allows for much more data collection capabilities. Some of the standalone VR headsets, like the Pico ones, have eye tracking, but for the most part, when you want eye tracking, heart rate, or anything along those lines, you're going to want to have one of these higher end headsets, especially since most of those accessories require a computer anyways to be plugged in. So yeah, that is the main downfall here, above and beyond the price, as you can see. But being plugged in is obviously not great for all situations. But when you have a VR lab set up and you want that high quality, these are the headsets you're going to want to look for. And so we suggest HTC or HP kind of interchangeably, depending on a couple factors. Kind of the two best headsets for a VR lab setup, and then Vario if you need that super high quality. So Vario is the highest quality headset on the market. Astronauts use it to train to go to space. The military uses it for their training. RCMP is using it. It is for that high end level of training. So yeah, if you want a demo of any of these, please let me know. I'm happy to talk about that. And then we'll get into accessories. So hide my face again because I keep covering up text here. But we have kind of four types of VR accessories. First is VR gloves. Some of the headsets on the market do have hand tracking, but it's not perfect yet. So having a glove allows you to interact with the virtual world as if you were interacting with the real world, just like you use your hands. It allows that immersive experience. It allows that data capture if you want to understand how somebody who is doing some sort of action in the future. And obviously, yeah, it just has that intuitive interaction, so you don't have to learn how to use a controller. Then there's VR suits. We recommend the Tesla suit. They can get quite expensive, but they allow for full body haptics. So with a Tesla suit, if you're a police officer training, you can feel what a taser feels like, or partially feel what a gunshot feels like, or things along those lines. As well as firefighters, you can use it for feeling the heat of a fire. So anything along those lines, it's very advanced haptic feedback, as well as then being able to capture your emotions. So if there's multiplayer environments and you want you want somebody in the multiplayer environment to see your full body movement, suits like this allow you to do that, as well as being able to capture that motion capture data to look at afterwards to see, did you move the right way? Were you on your hands and knees crawling when you were going through the smoke and the fire, things along those lines. As well as some of these allow for biometric feedback, so heart rate, galvanic skin response, things along those lines. Then we have EEG and GSR, so brain waves and galvanic skin response. So as you can see in this picture, kind of a big device you put on your head. There's ones that are getting smaller and ones that are just built into your face mask. There's different options out there. but allows to track your brain activity. A lot of research going into how that brain activity can then show what your emotions are, and can be used as a second controller. Obviously, in most training environments, you're not going to want to control something with your mind, but depending on what it is, you can do that. Maybe if you were integrating one of these pieces of hardware into your real world physical space, you could then train with it in the virtual space. But especially great for the emotion tracking, we've found being able to understand, is somebody confident? Are they scared? Happy? How are they feeling as they go through different types of simulations to evaluate them? And then lastly, definitely the least developed so far, but there are more environmental factors, so smell, taste, temperature. So we mentioned temperature with the VR suits. Obviously, there's also like heaters and fans that are built into headsets and built into other accessories for the temperature. And then on the smell and taste, there's all kinds of things being worked on, especially smell, different things that hook on to the bottom of your headset so that you can smell the environment you're going into. It just makes it that much more immersive. And taste, it's very early on, if I'm being honest, but there are researchers working on having electrodes on a glass so that when you drink, the electrodes touch your lips and can create different sensations that make you think you're tasting a different drink than just drinking water or whatever's in there. So really interesting array of accessories. So they're definitely all kind of farther behind than the audio and visual that is in VR headsets, but they're all at different progressions and offer some great abilities when building out a simulation. All right, now we're coming up to the end here. So if you have any questions, please feel free again to post them in the comments. But yeah, there's different approaches to VR. So we've kind of seen 3 ways to do this in an academic institution or really any enterprise location. First is a VR lab. So I'm actually right beside the one that we've helped run and build here at Brock University. And these VR labs, you kind of have an open space where you have all the equipment always set up so that you can easily do training, run demos, anything you need. And it's great when you can bring people on campus or bring people to your location when COVID's not a thing, as well as if you just have a small group of people that need to use it regularly. It's a great way to do a setup. That said, if you have 20, 40, 100, 500 students that you're sending headsets out to, or that you need to get into headsets, a VR lab's probably not the best option because you're going to have to book out that space and it just wouldn't work for everybody needing to use the equipment for their class. So with remote VR, you can just mail a headset or you can get a really nice setup with a Pelican case like you can see in the picture here, where basically you have one of those standalone headsets with the controllers, put it into the box, mail it off to somebody with the return shipping. And for the semester or for however long you're loaning the headset to them, they're able to get their practice in right from home without needing any other equipment or needing to download anything, do anything. Maybe you'll need them to connect to the internet with it, depending on the simulation you have, but usually quite simple. And then they can ship it right back to you. So, or they can drop it off at your school or however you want to set that up. We've helped multiple people and professors and institutions set up a system like that. So another great way and one of the best ways we've seen to get headsets out to students. And then lastly, if you do have a lot of classes in your institution using VR, but they're not all doing it at the same time, but students are coming onto campus, mobile VR stands have been a great option as well. So this isn't really the best picture, but the best one that I could find at the moment. But basically it has the setup, the computer you might need, the headset, controllers, any accessories, all on this mobile cart on wheels. So you can very easily deliver the headset to the class that needs it. And it's all right there and ready to go. And you can move it across your campus. Then last slide here, or no, second last slide, methods of delivery. So if you are shipping out those headsets, whether you're shipping them out, you're doing them in person in your VR lab, or you have a mobile VR station, the methods of delivery, you're going to want to make sure that you have a good process for keeping everything clean. So this can be on the lowest level, Lysol wipes and some paper towels. You wipe them down each time, make sure they're disinfected. So you have the student send them back to you, the headset manager, whoever that is, professor, an IT person, they do the cleaning, and then they're able to go out again. If you have a lot of headsets, we suggest a clean box, or there's a couple others pieces of hardware out there where you put the headset in and it uses UV rays to clean the headset and disinfect and everything. And we've seen that this can be very helpful when you have like hundreds of headsets and you need to process them quickly. And I see your question here, Lawrence. I will get to that in just a second as I get to the last slide here. So what is next? So going through this, you might have now had your curiosity kind of ignited. As we say at XpertVR, ignite curiosity is our vision. So if you had your curiosity ignited, you want to start looking into VR and you're thinking, what is next? How do you start moving forward? So if it was with us, as well as I think how lots of other companies operate, but speaking from XpertVR's knowledge, you're going to want to come to us probably with some type of ideas, sit down, have that, think about that team you want in place, think about those questions that I posed earlier. And again, this will be posted. So if you want to go back and look at those, feel free to do that and come up with the ideas of possible programs you want to impact. Then, depending on your needs, this is completely up to you, but we're happy to sign NDAs to make sure that anything you share with us is confidential. Then we would set up a consultation free of charge for your first consultation. If we're doing like a year-long consultation, obviously we have packages for that, but first consultations and starting to answer your questions and everything completely free. And this is usually just a great brainstorming session where we sit down, talk about projects that are out there and make sure that we're all on the same page and come up with some actionable ideas to move forward. From there, we would sign off on contracts and everything once we have the idea put together, and then really start designing that idea with your industry experts, with your pedagogy experts, making sure we're not missing any detail. Then our development team comes in, they're able to start developing. We kind of have a 3-part development process where we start with developing out your art and the environment that is going to be used to tell the story that we designed in the last step. Then the programmers come in and start designing all the functionality and how you'll interact with and use the environment. And then 3 is the next portion here of testing and feedback and revisions. So we understand that we might not get it right the first time. We're almost always very close, but then sitting down with the industry experts, maybe the users, getting that first kind of pilot group to go through and all of the key shareholders to go through and do that testing alongside our team doing our testing, obviously, as well, to make sure we're flushing out any bugs and that we didn't forget anything. Then we move to implementation. So making sure you have all the headsets in place, everything you need in place to launch this within your institution. And then getting feedback from the users. Usually at this point, the simulation is done and we're not going to really make any more changes because we've already done that pilot testing. But getting the feedback from users allows us and allows you to understand as you're releasing more VR products or you're upgrading and adding new features down the road, seeing what users really need and making sure we're collecting that feedback. All right, so that was how to integrate VR into your e-learning strategy, or how the metaverse is going to impact your e-learning strategy. So if you have any questions, please comment them below. I know we had some issues with LinkedIn, which is where most people were tuning in. So it's too bad we probably won't get a ton of questions at the end here, but if you're watching this live recording, please feel free to comment on the, sorry, not the live recording, the playback recording. Please feel free to comment or send me a direct email there or anything you would like connecting on LinkedIn. But to get to Lawrence's question here, can you touch on what universities tend to be wanting to learn in and about with VR? Are there subjects or pieces of hardware that are getting the most attention? And what about NFTs? All right, I love this multi-question here, Lawrence. Thank you. So first, touching on what universities tend to want to learn in or about with VR. So I don't know for sure here if you mean about VR or how they use VR. So I'll quickly answer both. Usually the about VR is kind of just all the general questions that I answered there. That's why we've put together this presentation in the way that it's put together, just to answer what types of hardware are out there, what you might want to look at, what are the different solutions, how much it costs, timelines, things along those lines are usually the questions about VR. But then the learning in VR, we found it's a lot of the hands-on skills is kind of number one. So we've been doing a lot of police, firefighting, some trades work, and those types of simulations where to train a student, let's say on how to put out a fire or do a search and rescue procedure in a fire, you would have to bring all of your students to a secure location where you can do a safe burn of a building. You have to have that building, obviously, have the students have all the protective gear, still not a super safe environment, very costly to do that safe burn and to have everything set up properly, all the water you need to use, on and on and on. There's a lot of costs and resources needed there. So they'll come to us and say, this is something we can maybe only do once a year with our students. Can we build a VR simulation where either it replaces that so that students can go through these types of search and rescue scenarios or trade jobs or whatever it is day after day and get a lot of practice? Or they say, we're still going to do this yearly real world physical live burn or training session. But we only have access to that once a year, access to the lab space once a year, once a semester. So let's have the students practice up so that by the time we get there, it can be a real test that they've practiced their skills before they've gotten to that live burn or testing location or into the lab. On the flip side of things, we've also seen a large amount of interest in the soft skills space. So right now, when you're training in an education environment or really anywhere, to how do you communicate as a leader? How do you talk to somebody as a counselor and make sure that you're helping your clients or your patients correctly? As a police officer, how do you interview witnesses and victims and people along those lines? Or how do you de-escalate a big situation where somebody has a mental health crisis or anything along those lines? Can be very difficult to practice for, because usually you're just sitting across from a peer and they're pretending to be whoever you're talking to, and you're having this conversation, but you might be kind of laughing because it's your friend, or it just doesn't seem very realistic because the environment, you're just sitting at a table kind of doing this role-playing exercise. And I've seen a couple other ways that's done, but really not that immersive. So being able to build that in virtual reality, where right now we're using those conversation trees and we're starting to, fingers crossed, over the next year or so, move towards AI, depending on how our research and development goes, where you can have more of a natural conversation. But even with the conversation trees built into the simulation, it's very much along the lines of that role playing, except now you're in the environment. Now there's all kinds of other distractions and things around you that you can interact with that would be there in the real world. You're not just talking to your colleague. It's an avatar that you're speaking with that looks like the victim or your patient or whoever it may be. And you can also, if you have that hooked up for multiplayer, you could still do the role playing, but then have all of that added benefit. So those are kind of the two main areas: soft skills, hard skills. That kind of covers everything. But hopefully that kind of answers your question there. Are there subjects or pieces of hardware that are getting the most attention? So yeah, I think I just touched on some of the subjects that are getting the most attention. We've seen a lot in trades, healthcare, emergency services, and then general soft skills is what we've kind of seen. On the hardware side of things, it really is a mixed bag. I think the most kind of popular has been the Meta Quest 2 or the Oculus Quest 2. because of its price point. That being said, uh, for most academic institutions, they have some issues with Facebook or having it be mandatory to have a Facebook login to use the headset. And Facebook has announced that they are going to be getting rid of that or having some workaround for that. They said this year, nothing's really happened yet. There are some workarounds, but nothing's perfect. And when you're buying 100 plus headsets, you want it to be perfect so you don't run into issues down the road. So if you need a standalone headset, we've been suggesting the Vive Focus 3. It's an incredible headset with removable battery and all kinds of other amazing features, as well as Pico, another amazing headset. But to be honest, they all have their own advantages, disadvantages. To talk about the disadvantages, like we did with Facebook and Meta there on the HTC side, it's really that price point and not having any educational programs set up for discounts or multi-purchase. We've been talking with them and they are working on that. They have one that just released for their older Vive Focus lineup, but not for the Vive Focus 3 lineup yet. So hopefully that starts to take off because that is where most people are interested if they could afford it. And then Pico, amazing company, but they were just bought by TikTok last year, or the company that owns TikTok. And so there is that same worry from a lot of academic institutions. Are they going to have the same issues that they're having with Facebook right now? And then obviously there's all kinds of other tethered headsets. We love to work with Vario if it can be afforded, but obviously it is a very expensive headset if you're trying to get headsets out to hundreds of students. So usually we're talking about those standalone headsets. And then lastly, what about NFTs? So yeah, definitely want to continue the NFT talk in the education space in some of our upcoming interviews that are coming up, as well as probably another full webinar on NFTs and how the crypto space is going to affect education. I probably should have had one slide in here anyways, but we'll definitely have a full conversation on that coming up. But to touch on it quickly right now, I think it's really interesting to first look at Duke University in the States and Coursera. They have a partnership where one of the courses that you can take on Coursera that gives you a class credit at Duke University now gives you an NFT when you graduate. So that NFT proves that you went through the course. I don't know if it has like your grade or anything else like that attached to it, but just an interesting way that as soon as you're done the course and you've graduated or you've passed the course, you get this NFT. And I can see how introducing that across the board for all programs, all courses, could mean you have this collection where it's very easy for an employer or anybody interested in just talking with you to go and see, oh, well, you took this course, and then ask more questions about that. And so really great for that type of exposure and especially that credibility that this NFT has been approved by X, Y, or Z institution, and there's no way of faking that. So I think that's amazing, as well as just an NFT that's attached to your final diploma or anything along those lines. But what I'm really interested in beyond, or well, I guess two areas beyond the diploma and certificate side of things is one on NFTs for course material. So right now, as a student, you kind of have two options. You're either going and buying a textbook, and then you get to resell that at a discounted price a year later or semester later to other students, or you're buying some type of online textbook or online course material that you pay a membership for, and at the end of your semester or year, you lose the membership, you don't get any money back, and it is what it is. You needed it for the course. So I think as we move into this metaverse NFT space, it'll be very interesting to attach NFTs to course material. So as an example, we have our police product, our police training simulations that are being rolled out at police foundation schools across Canada. And with this, right now the school is paying us for those licenses, But as VR becomes more accessible, I could definitely see how we would have an NFT attached to that. Let's just say like a police hat or a badge or something, just as the 3D art to represent the NFT. And then once you purchase that, you get access to the course material. So that's great. You can use it throughout your course, just like you would like a textbook or like those other online course materials that I was talking about. But then at the end, you might get some extra benefits for being top of your class, or for the amount of hours of practice that you put in, or all kinds of things, or maybe job interviews that come attached with it. But then you could also sell that. So you have the NFT and you pass the course, you now get another NFT that shows that you passed the course or that you got your diploma, and you can sell your police badge back to another student that is coming in. And just like you were able to resell your textbooks, do a very similar thing with online material. And then thirdly and lastly, I know we're up on the hour here, but the last thing for NFTs that I think is really interesting is those benefits that are attached to your certificate, diploma, or anything that is NFT related down the road. So imagine a student graduates, you get your paper diploma, but you also get your NFT diploma, and that's all it is. And you use it for a few years on your portfolio or whatever, but you don't do maybe too much with it. Maybe you do a lot with it. But then 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, the school sees, okay, we released these and we've been releasing them for the past 20 years. We want to now offer a community group. So you could offer a community group that is a Discord or some type of group that students from X, Y, or Z graduating year can now join this community to be connected with other alumni. Or there can be free tickets to a concert that's going on that's like raffled off only to alumni of this year. Or they could send out benefits saying, hey, you've been in the industry for 10 years. Maybe it's time to up your skills in your management style or in your management skills. Here's some free courses, or here's a discounted course at our university. So there's just so many of these benefits that could be directly attached to the NFT or that could be added afterwards. So I think there's a very large amount of opportunity there in the NFT space, and how it plays into education. And like I said, we'll do a full presentation on that, and there might be some interesting projects XpertVR is working on in the coming months that we'll be able to talk about in that webinar, that workshop, or our future interviews as well. All right, so that was a long-winded going through all your questions there, Lawrence. Hopefully I answered everything. And I don't see any other questions here, likely because most people were tuning in through LinkedIn and we had some issues there. But again, if you're watching this recording, please feel free to comment in the comments below, or to send me an email or connect with me on LinkedIn there. And I would be happy to answer any questions that you have. And yeah, really looking forward to getting VR into the hands of more educators. Thanks, Lawrence. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And thank you everyone else that tuned in. Feel free to, again, connect with me on LinkedIn, follow us at XpertVR on LinkedIn or across other social media, so you get more webinars and interviews that are coming up. We'll have another interview, just planning the last few details, but should have another interview in 2 weeks, and more webinars, interviews to come. All right, everyone, have a great Wednesday. May the 4th be with you, and I will see you next time.